Hey, Dr. Luther, what are you doing with the frog?
Yeah, this is a beautiful green frog here, and it's kind of wearing a bow tie. You know, there's this legend, Derek, that if you kiss a frog, it'll turn into, well, in my case, I sure would love it to turn into a princess. You know, I think that would be really nice. Uh, so, see what happens. I mean, here I go. This is the frog right here, and I'm about to kiss it. And maybe it'll turn into a princess. So here I go.
Okay, everybody watching.
No, I'm not gonna turn into a princess. No! What's a frog?
Okay.
Always a frog.
What's going on here? This frog did not turn into a princess. It's still a frog. Can you see it? It's still green, and it's still got bug eyes. What is going here? So, Derek, what are we learning from this? What's going on here?
Look, you can't take the Old Testament and make it the New Testament. That's what's going on. They're trying to change what the New Testament really is and make it fit the Old Testament. They just don't fit, but you're about to see that. So here we go.
We are Myth Vision,
Home of Myth Vision Podcast and Myth Vision Radio Group. My co-host is Derek Lambert. I'm Dr. Luther G. Williams. You'll find us on Facebook, where you can like us and catch up on the latest research and upcoming guests. On YouTube, like and subscribe, comment.
A peace plan for Gaza. For the plan to advance, Hamas must disarm. Instead,
tonight, terrifying images emerging from Gaza. Videos show Hamas-linked gunmen carrying out a public execution as they return to the streets.
Hamas on a rampage, executing Palestinians.
Share, link to us, let us know your coordinates in cyberspace, okay? Here come that PayPal and Patreon. Look out, don't let them get past you. Show us some love, will you? Now, Derek and I are very excited about today's show and our very special guest. Robert Eisenman is a scholar, novelist, essayist, author of the New Testament Code, The Cup of the Lord, The Damascus Covenant, and The Blood of Christ. In 2006, he wrote that. His magnum opus, many say, is James, the Brother of Jesus, The Key to Unlocking the Secrets of Early Christianity in the Dead Sea Scrolls. That was in 1998. The Dead Sea Scrolls and the First Christians, 1996. Yes, it is. As a matter of fact, I'm not going to delay. I want to show that one. Can everybody see this book?
That's not the Penguin copy you got there. That's the English copy.
Well, this English copy, along with the index, is some 1,073 pages.
Yeah,
So
the
it's
The Penguin one is still in print in the United States. I don't know about that one. I can't say.
Well, wonderful. I tell you, as we say in the business, it's a chunk of change. Also, you did Islamic Law in Palestine and Israel, a history of the survival of Tanzimat and Sharia, and co-editor of the facsimile edition of the Dead Sea Scrolls in 1989 and the Dead Sea Scrolls Uncovered in 1992. He is professor of Middle East religions and archaeology and Islamic law and the director of the Institute for the Study of Judeo-Christian Origins at California State University, Long Beach, and visiting senior member of Lineker College in Oxford. He holds a Bachelor of Arts degree from Cornell University in philosophy and engineering physics, a Master of Arts degree from New York University in Near Eastern Studies, and a doctorate in philosophy from Columbia University, a doctorate of philosophy in Middle East languages and cultures and Islamic law.
You got it, right.
He was a senior fellow at the Oxford Center for Postgraduate Hebrew Studies, and listen to this. This is important. An American Endowment for the Humanities Fellow in Residence at the Albright Institute of Archaeological Research in Jerusalem, and that's where the Dead Sea Scrolls were first examined. Now, in the early 1990s, Professor Eisenman was the consultant to the Huntington Library in San Marino, California, on its decision to open its archives and allow free access for all scholars to the previously unpublished scrolls. And that's very important to understand the spirit of his work. In 2002, he was the first to publicly announce that the so-called James ossuary, which was so suddenly and miraculously appearing on the scene, was fraudulent. And he did it the same day that it was made public on the basis of his astute analysis. On his website, you can find his books, articles, reviews, interview, and opinion pieces, links, photographs.
And RobertHEisenman.com.
And I think one of those is a bit more user-friendly, if I may say so.
The second one. The second
Very
one.
good. All right. And his material on YouTube covers the full range of his interests and activities. This is important to know. In presenting his research, Professor Eisenman has sometimes been attacked. He's been threatened. He's been sued. He's had to leave the podium under possible threat to his person. And so this is sensitive information. It does rile some people up. He's passionate about it. We hope you'll be passionate about it too. And that's why it's so special to have him with us tonight. So welcome, Professor Eisenman. How are you this evening?
Trying to survive.
All right. Well, let's get right down to business. Tell us how learning about James, the brother of the Lord, can shed some light on our understanding of Jesus. I call that the Eisenman thesis. So tell us a little bit about that connection.
James is referred to in Paul's letters, and he's also appears at the end of the book of Acts, so the last third of the book of Acts. But you see,
every month, this Airbnb pays me about $2,700 in semi-passive income. Now, here's the thing. I don't own it and I don't pay any rent. Now, here's the thing. You can actually do this too. It doesn't even matter where you live. Even if you're in a boring little town, almost no one travels to. And if you think I'm in here every single day, changing sheets, cleaning up after people, and messaging people on the app all day long, think again. So the question is this: how did I do it? Through a new method called Airbnb co-listing in conjunction with Zillow. Let me show you how it works. Step number 1, go to Zillow.com and type in your city. Step number 2, click on a property that's for rent. This property has been sitting on Zillow for the last 42 days, which means that the landlord is losing money and needs your help. Step number 3, copy the address. Step number 4, paste the address into the Airbnb Analyzer app and click this big blue button. The Airbnb Analyzer app shows this property could potentially generate 2.5 times the long-term rental rate. You can plug into an existing property like this, and once you automate a few easy tasks, even if you're slammed with work, family, and a million other things, you could have a semi-passive income stream. I'll show you how to rinse and repeat and add 2 or 3 more of these income streams every single month. Now, I know that's a lot to take in, but check this out. I've got 24 of these generating a combined $158,000 in semi-passive cash flow every single month. That's more than I used to make in 3 years working full time. And if you want some extra cash on the side or to replace your active income with semi-passive income so you can live now instead of waiting 30 years to retire, this is exactly what you've been looking for. And guess what? You found it at the perfect moment in history. I'll explain more on the next page, but Airbnb is going gangbusters in every state, every city, and every town all across America. So what are you waiting for? Click anywhere around this ad right now, and on the next page, you'll find a concise A to Z video training that takes you into every nook and cranny of this opportunity. In just 26 minutes, you'll also learn how my system works, how to plug into an existing property and potentially create a semi-passive income stream. Heads up though, I don't plan on keeping up this training forever. So if you're serious about potentially creating a second income stream and maybe a third one, you want to do it now, quickly and easily, don't put this off. Click right now. Watch the free training. I think you'll love what you're about to learn, and I'll see you on the inside.
Let's go.
they have a James in the Gospels that people confuse him with. They, the brother of John, the son of Zebedee, and so on and so forth. I don't think the gospel portrait is or are reliable, and those are more in the nature of literature, whereas Paul's letters are actual events that occur. And this, when he's angry at James, he says so. He says in Galatians, I think it's second chapter, he mentions him, and it's not Zebedee that he's talking about. He said, not that his importance means anything to me. So, I mean, he makes it so that's, I would consider to be a negative comment. Absolutely. The reason he's referring to his importance is James is the leader of the early church. But you see, we'd only know that if we go to the church fathers. You don't have a picture of that either in the Gospels. Later in the book of Acts, around from chapter 16 on, where the we document intervenes in the narrative. I say we document. The early part of Acts is like the Gospels: he, they, she, etc. Third person, singular and plural. But around 16, you have a different document: I, we, and that looks like it's from an actual travel diario, probably from Luke or someone like Luke. And that one has James, the brother of Jesus. So, and Paul speaks in 1 Galatians, James, the brother of the Lord. So he knows that this James exists, even if he doesn't like him or if he's at odds with him. Well, the point is that this second part of the book of Acts really enlightens us who this James is. And he's the leader of the early church. Peter is not the leader of the early church. All of this is mythological from the literary presentation of the Gospels. So if you want to go to a really true picture, go to the we document in Acts. And I don't like to compliment Acts, but the we document is a very convincing presentation. Like in chapter 21, Paul goes up to Jerusalem, and who is he going to see? James, the brother of the Lord. He's not come up. The others may have died or supposedly disappeared or whatever. One supposedly went to Spain. I mean, all that is I would say unreliable, to be kind. But James, they're not in Jerusalem. They're not leading the church. And also this James has a sobriquet. He's always called the righteous one, James the righteous. And that's a special title. The Dead Sea Scrolls, the righteous teacher, the teacher of righteousness, every time he's referred to in a text, which is what I build my presentation on, the word they're interpreting and explaining is the tzaddik, the righteous one. Tzaddik in Kabbalah and the Hasidim is the righteous one, and he's always the leader in those presentations. And in the scrolls, the tzaddik leads the community, and James is the leader of the early church for the second part of the book of Acts, and as far as Paul is concerned, because he knows that he's getting his instructions from James and he doesn't like it.
Wix gives you the power of AI to build the website you need. With full business functionality and a design tailored just for you. Customize every element of your website and watch your vision come to life in minutes. Control everything from the biggest tasks to the finest details. Personalized, optimized, ready to go live.
At skullshaver.com.
Professor Eisenman, something interesting about James, and there's a dichotomy between James and Paul. Now, we've heard you say that, obviously Paul's not teaching the same things as James. It's pretty apparently clear. Right. So if you could you touch on that a little bit? And then also, I wanted to give you something in mind on that. there are some people who say that Paul and all the New Testament is preaching to only Israelites, that the Gentiles are actually secret diaspora Israelites. Can you give some insight?
Well, shall we say that the only real audience Paul and his associates would have had would have been Gentiles. So if you want to call them Jews, go ahead. But Jews obviously rejected the Pauline approach. They didn't really follow the Jamesian approach. They didn't follow the Dead Sea Scrolls. You know, the Dead Sea Scrolls were, you know, put into the caves, and the movements followers or members or whatever you want to call it were clearly, I think, mostly, if not all, killed. A few managed to escape the Romans, because I think all these people, you see, participated in the uprising against Rome. That's what's so important. The uprising against Rome occurred in 70 AD or CE, and the temple was destroyed at that time. And I really have an interesting point about that, because in my works, I always speak about people asking about the Copper Scroll. And recently I saw a presentation of the Copper Scroll on, I think it was Spy TV. And they were saying, the scholars talking about the Copper Scroll is a work in copper found among the Qumran caves. And it's a treasure list of hiding places, and quite huge amounts of treasure. So they all say, well, what happened to this treasure? Where did it all go? And it's quite clear, and I made that clear in my books long before this program I saw, that this is the temple treasure. And why is it the temple treasure? The Essenes or the revolutionaries didn't have huge amounts of gold. How come it's the temple treasure? Because during the uprising, the opposition zealot type movements had control of the Temple Mount. And therefore they would have been able, they knew the Romans were going to take the temple, so they would have been able to try to hide the temple treasure. Those amounts are the temple treasure. I said this in my books. And I said, but I don't think they did. And so these people are saying, well, what happened? What happened? I mean, look at these hiding places. Well, the Romans were very good at torture, extremely good at torture. And don't you think if there was any gold or treasure out there anywhere, they would find it? And if they couldn't find it, they would torture you in every way until you came up with it. They were not people who were very sympathetic to people keeping secrets or anything. And you wouldn't be, short of committing suicide, you wouldn't be able not to disclose it. So I said in my book, oh, sure, they can't find anything because the Romans got it all. They got it all. But even more than that, I say in my book that Titus and Vespasian, the Roman generals who came to Palestine in the late 60s and put down the uprising, that they then went back to Rome and built the Colosseum. And I say in my book, well, that's the money, the treasure. Where did they get the substance to build this huge, this huge stadium of death? And it's just the opposite, of course, of the temple treasure. So in this TV program I was watching on the Copper Scroll, they were all discussing it, and they were asking these kinds of questions. At the very end of this, they actually show that they recently found in Rome, low down on the Colosseum, a hidden kind of inscription that they had to pare away, a small inscription from that period, not a later period, that said, this.
Parents of children who play Roblox. If your child was sexually exploited, abused, or pressured to share explicit content by someone they met on Roblox, you may qualify to file a claim. Estimated compensation varies depending on what happened and how it affected your child. For cases involving exposure to sexual materials, estimated compensation may range from $25,000 to $50,000. If your child was coerced into sending explicit content and is receiving ongoing mental health treatment, estimated compensation may range from $50,000 to $300,000. And in more serious cases, such as physical abuse, attempted rape, sexual assault, or trafficking, estimated compensation may range from $300,000 to over $1 million. Filing a claim is free, confidential, and takes just 2 to 3 minutes.
Structure was built by Titus and Vespasian from the proceeds of their war in Judea. And that's exactly what I said in my books before they even found this inscription. And I have no doubt that that is the truth. The temple treasure went into building the Roman Colosseum. And when I went in the Colosseum, I wouldn't go in it for that reason.
Wow.
Because it's a blood sport, pagan, horrific monstrosity in terms of not the beautiful, the architecture, no, what took place there.
Agreed. Luther, you're muted, brother.
It's a symbol of anti-Semitism, but anti-Semitism really pervades the New Testament scriptures as we know it. How did that happen, Professor Eisenman?
Well, now, the Colosseum isn't a symbol of anti-Semitism, because they were killing all kinds of prisoners there, you know, in gladiatorial combats and everything like that with animals. I mean, what they did in the Colosseum was revolting. Yeah, they did put a lot of their Jewish prisoners to death there, I'm sure, but they hadn't probably built it by that time, so they weren't the ones who were really involved in the gladiatorial contests at that time.
Anti-Semitism in the New Testament. Tell us about it.
Anti-Semitism flows out of the Gospels because the Jews are presented as doing all these things to Jesus, and that produces a negative effect, when in fact probably the revolutionary Jews were being led by people like Jesus, James, and others. So, I mean, all that is part of the literary reconstruction. And who did that literary reconstruction? People that ended up in Rome after the war. Josephus, Paul. We know that the governor in Caesarea protected Paul with a Roman soldier escort, rescued him from the Jewish crowd in the temple, who were saying, this man preaches against our people, against the temple, and against against this land. And he was being mobbed in the temple when he came in. They didn't want him to be there, and someone had already prearranged, because James sent him into the temple. James wanted him to go into the temple when he came up in Acts 21:21. He says, okay, go into the temple to show there's no truth to the rumors we've heard about you, that you preach against the law, against the temple. And we know that he does do that, according to his letters. We know there's no truth to these things. Go into the temple and pay for four people we have here under oath. Nazarite oath is a very specific oath. You could take a lifelong Nazarite like Samson, but you could take a temporary Nazarite oath, at the end of which you have to pay some money in there. And the temporary Nazarite oath is what James is talking about. 4 people, and we know you have money, so you can. Paul was raising money. You can pay for these. So nothing loath, he goes into the temple, according to this is the we document now, Acts 21:22, etc. He goes into the temple, and with the money he's raising to pay for 4 people they have under Nazarite oath. Now that shows you the James people observed Nazarite oaths, but Paul was not. James wanted him to show he was a hypocrite, to show that he was, he preached one thing overseas, and when he came to Palestine, he was willing to do something else. Anyway, to show him up, shall we say? And so he wasn't embarrassed to do this, but the people in the temple saw him, the mob, and they said, "We know this person. He preaches against our people, against the temple." And there was a huge riot, and they threw Paul out. It says, and closed the door behind him. And then the Roman troops come down from the parapets from Antonia and rescue him from the mob. And he says, "You're a Roman citizen, right?" He shows, supposedly he doesn't have a passport, but he makes it clear to them that he is, or they already know that he's a Roman citizen. He said, "Do you let the crowd do this to Roman citizens?" He says to the troops, and the troops rescue him, and it's in Acts, and force the crowd to listen to him preach, and then take him under armed escort to Caesarea, where the Roman governor is, and they protect him. It's protective custody, and they send him to Rome in protective custody. And when he gets to Rome, he himself says he was perfectly free, and there was nothing, there were no charges or anything against him at all, and we don't know what happened to him after that.
Professor Eisenman, one thing about Paul that I think is so important that a lot of Christians don't realize is he is the creator, technically, of Christianity, so to speak.
Yeah, that's what we're going to talk about. This being, those gospel documents were written in Rome and Alexandria, perhaps, by people like Paul, Josephus, who was a traitor, who went over to Titus and Vespasian to save his life, and proclaimed Vespasian the next. The Messiah who was to come out of Palestine to rule the world. He applied the messianic prophecy to Vespasian. Josephus did. This is how cynical he was. That's cynical. It's all in his book, in his autobiography, is what's called the Vita. Anyway, these are the people who are in Rome, plus a lot of Herodians.
You need 3 cushy layers of clothes and more.
The hardest thing is to get started. You have to get it on paper.
We have started to deal with computers in higher and higher levels of abstraction.
Just push a button.
Rapid prototyping allows you to find what's important early on. You're able to learn very quickly.
People then end up spending more time on the decisions of what they want to actually make.
Who have sought refuge in Rome from the Herodian family. And it turns out that Paul admits that he is from the Herodian family. Yeah, he admits at the end of Romans, where he sends greetings to his kinsman, the littlest Herod. It's in chapter, I don't remember what the number, but something like, the last chapter of Romans. He sends greetings to his Herodian kinsman.
Holy crap.
I mean, I don't know, Christians don't read their scripture very carefully, obviously, because if you read it and just don't pray and worship and all this sort of thing, and look up at a cross and do prayers and all that. But if you actually read the documents, read Paul's letters, there is no brotherly love in Paul whatsoever. There is no Christian charity. The people he hates, and he doesn't like James. And I can't remember some of the passages, but I take Paul's letters as authentic in terms of being historical. Some of them, Galatians, 1 and 2 Corinthians. Some people talk about parts of Romans, but certainly that last part of Romans is not. No one could invent that. And a few other ones, Philippians, and so on. So the letters and the We document. That's what I would start my history of Christianity with.
You've taken the position that the attack on Stephen in Acts is really an overwrite for the attack on James by Paul. What led you to that conclusion?
Well, that attack on Stephen is in the historical parts of Acts, the he, they, third person narrative, like the Gospels. And I didn't ever accept that there was a Stephen who was converted, who came up to the temple and so on, and was attacked in the temple, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But we know that that James was attacked in the temple, and not by his like-minded Jewish followers, but by the pro-Roman Pharisee and others like that who were collaborating with the Roman authorities. the people collaborating with, and therefore rabbinic Judaism is not really very focused on things like the Dead Sea Scrolls, because that's a different kind of Judaism, and that's an anti-Roman, totally law-oriented, and you don't have a discussion of the legal points and softening them, hardening them, changing them into something else that you get in halakha and rabbinic discussion in the Talmud and other later documents. So the Pharisees, rabbinic Judaism, as it were, though it did help preserve Judaism for a long period, it is not the ethos of the Jewish people in Palestine in the first century who were fighting the Romans. It's the ethos of those who were cooperating with the Romans.
I got a question for you, if you don't mind, Professor Eisenman, about
Sure.
Paul, because Paul seems to be, he's a huge target in this because he's stirring some serious stuff up going on here in the first century. How much influence would you say Rome and the powers that be in Rome during the times around Paul's writings had an influence on the documentation of either Paul or even the New Testament Gospels, similar to our friends from the Creating Christ book, James Valiant and such? Do you think that maybe the Caesars have some involvement in their communicating
I don't know
with them?
The publisher of Josephus, it was a secretary of the Flavians, the new dynasty centering around Titus and Vespasian, and his name was it's in Philippians. What's his name? The one that Paul sends to Rome. I don't hear you. The sound has gone off.
Epaphroditus.
Yeah, that's who it is. Epaphroditus. Yeah.
So you think he might have?
So he would be the kind of person who would be involved in the writing of the New Testament. Paul was in Rome. Josephus was in Rome. Herodians were in Rome. Epaphroditus was in Rome. So what we have in the Gospels at least starts to flow from them. And then you have certain variations, the four Gospels and so on. Even John is a different sort of a stream of stuff, but it's like-minded. Like you have things like
I had a crazy idea. We were surprised that no one had done it before.
Success doesn't follow formula, and neither do you.
Who knew that dancing with dogs could actually become a career?
Planning ahead,
I knew that the experience was going to start when people go into the website.
or playing it by ear,
I saw the opportunity and built my own online empire.
always moving forward.
Our website is the core of everything.
Your website, your journey. Succeed your way.
Meet the most insightful way to never scoop again. Litter Robot 5, the next generation of litter robot. The new Waste ID system detects the type of bathroom visit, number 1, and number 2 cycles quickly for instant odor management. With the same footprint as a traditional litter box, the elegant design and appliance-grade materials complement any style, any space, and now any place. The new integrated scale tray allows you to put it on any floor type to accurately weigh your cat. Litter Robot 5 from Whisker, the greatest invention since cats.
love your enemy. That is a pro-Roman statement. Whereas the Dead Sea Scrolls say what? Hate the sons of the pit. So they're not. They don't believe in loving their enemy. Just the opposite. And they have a war scroll. A war scroll where the war of the sons of light against the sons of darkness, where they're preparing for a final apocalyptic war against all evil on the earth. And they're not in love with any of the people in the Roman sphere at all. And this is not Pauline Christianity. It's not Rabbinic Judaism, but it is like the Dead Sea Scrolls. And I would submit, I think the scrolls were part of this That's why I subtitle one of my books, The Messianic Movement in Palestine. It was part of the and the scrolls, people don't realize the Dead Sea Scrolls are messianic, but they're not pro-Roman messianism. They're anti-Roman messianism. They're not love your enemy messianism. I mean, I'm not trying to advertise and make people, love something and cover up a very harsh positions. But they, as I said, they are hate the sons of the pit messianism, and they're not. It's nicer to have a loving messianism. It goes down better. It makes you feel better. You can have a lot of friends, but that's not what the people in Judea, if you want to call it that, or Palestine, were feeling or thinking. And I'm sure Jesus wasn't either. And he didn't end up on the cross by accident, if he did end up on the cross, because that's what the Romans did to revolutionaries. So the New Testament is in very, very determined mode to explain away his execution on the cross, but it didn't want to blame the Romans. It wanted to blame the Jews somehow. Somehow the Jews forbade crucifixion. They didn't allow it. It was a forbidden form of punishment. So to blame the crucifixion on Jews in any way, shape, or form is just so untenable. It's out of this world. Don't hear you. I don't know why the sound
Luther, you mind if I ask him another one?
Don't settle for less. Enjoy a worry-free holiday with Rayovac. Get more savings and power more.
I don't know. Did I answer your question?
Okay, Derek, did he answer your question?
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead, Luther. Go ahead.
Okay, tell us something. I want to get a little deeper.
Wait, let him ask another one first before we go off another. What did you want to ask as far as
you got a follow up?
Yeah, Paul uses the language. He hijacks the Dead Sea Scroll language. He's using these messianic militant Jewish people language, and he flips it on its head and starts making Rome look good, like anyone who's following his message is the sons of light, and that these guys are the sons of darkness. Can you talk about some of those?
He is doing that all of the time, and I don't have the passages in front of me that I could refer to that you do. But yeah, Paul is reversing the ideology of the scrolls, and since I think James is the righteous one, the leader of Palestinian messianism, and also the same as the righteous teacher of the Dead Sea Scrolls, I think the two movements are the same. And the scroll literature is what I would call Palestinian messianism. So Paul is turning that on its head and reversing everything in it, and it works. It works. It would work extremely well, along with the gospel, fleshing it out. And we have it now for. I don't want to destroy anything, but it's worked for 1900 years, and it attracts people extremely well. That doesn't mean it reflects anything that happened in Palestine.
That flows perfectly into my next question.
Go ahead.
The philosophical positions held in Palestine, what do we learn about them from the Dead Sea Scrolls, particularly how the Qumran community related to the Zealots, the Sicarii, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, etc.? Give us some insight into that.
That the Qumran community at one point even call themselves zealots for the law, and they use the zealot terminology. They are anti-Pharisaic totally, Pharisaic Judaism. They're anti the Roman establishment, anyone who cooperates with the Herodian establishment. So you get this whole thing. And the scrolls were ultimately, some of them, taken up to Masada. And if you know what Masada was, Masada is where the group that Josephus pejoratively calls Sicarii, because he says they were called Sicarii because they like to cut people's throats. The Sika was the Roman knife or something like that. And he demonizes them when in fact the word Sicarius can mean something quite different. It can mean zealot. So I mean, the point of the matter is that he Josephus, I'm saying anyway, says the people who committed suicide on Masada were cutthroats, but that isn't true. They were the final remnants. We found Dead Sea Scrolls on Masada. That means what scrolls? They probably were the one who committed suicide on Masada. Rather than be taken prisoner, they committed suicide. And so none of them would have survived to any extent, except ones who had gone to northern Syria or down into Egypt. And we do have scrolls influencing Islam. There's a lot of Dead Sea Scroll, and I trace it somewhat in my books. I can't give it to you right now, but there's a lot of scroll influence in the Quran. You can listen to my courses on Islam on my websites, roberteisenman.com, robertheisenman.com. I have a lot of YouTubes up there of my courses on Islam, etc. And I do go into the influence when reading the Quran of some passages by the Dead Sea Scrolls. And the ethos of the Quran is very much like the scrolls, not like Christianity, as you know, because it's much more aggressive, much more unbending, much more uncompromising.
Luther, you get 2 since I hijacked the second one, brother.
Well, maybe I didn't finish the answer. What else did you want me to say regarding what your question was, Luther?
You covered a number of the groups we were talking about, the Sicarii, the Zealots, and so forth. My next question is really about this distinction you make between historical writings and literature, and I think that's a point well taken. You talk about the supernaturalness of the Gospels, and that as they progressed, some weird things happened. Brothers became cousins, and fathers became uncles, and mothers got somehow turned into their own sisters. How do you keep things straight in the light of all this literature bending? What's going on here?
Read my books.
Where are we?
Get the quilted comfort of Quilted Northern.
That's the only way to keep it straight. You can't keep it straight unless you can look at passage by passage that I cite in my books, and I also cite in my lectures and courses that you can get on my website. But I can't advise anyone how to keep it straight other than by reading. I think I'm one of the only ones who approaches the subject in this manner and gives you these kind of passages. So that's why I say read my books. If I had someone else I could recommend you who has it all straight, I would, but I'm not familiar. You mentioned somebody, but he may be also good, but I'm not familiar with anyone who's got it all straight, who can keep you on the straight and narrow.
Professor Eisenman, everybody's going to see that your books are in the description here. I want to make sure they know that at this point. If you're watching this, they're in the description. I'm going to give a list of all his books so that you guys have access to that. James, the brother of Jesus. Something that I wanted to bring to your attention, there's a group of people who are obviously trying to approach this New Testament text, and they're suggesting that salvation is only for Israel in the New Testament, right? And so, of course, Jesus comes for the lost sheep of Israel, et cetera, et cetera. And they get into Paul, and every time it says Gentile or there is neither Jew nor Greek, they don't mean Greek. They mean diaspora, Hellenized Jew. And so do you have anywhere that you would obviously suggest that it is Israel's only coming from Paul, or that it might be something that Paul's really breaking down the door and giving this to even the pagan world? Do you think he's limiting it?
Sure, he's taking it. His teaching is for the pagan world, and they're the ones who accepted it. And they became the kind of Christianity we're all familiar with now. Most Jews did not accept it, and I don't see how you could say it has anything to do with Judaism or Jews pro-Roman or anti-Roman, because it's very anti-Semitic. And so I don't see, and it's anti-law and things like that. He calls the law a curse at one point. I mean, no Jew would ever say that the law of Moses was a curse. It's just not possible. So as he's willing to talk like that, no Jew would be able to, in good conscience, be part of this. So these people who are saying these things are conjuring it up out of their imaginations, and I can't respond to people who are basically reflecting their own mindsets and imaginary insights.
Thank you for answering that, Luther.
Am I up again, Derek?
No, your time now, Derek.
Yes, sir.
I think that's you.
You got confused.
Oh, is it?
I asked the last. Yeah, I asked the last question.
Yay! I
This
get
one is
another
yours.
question. Awesome.
Right.
Okay, awesome.
This is you.
I'm gonna just go straight for the throat, Dr. Eisenman. Thank you so much for this, but I got to lay this out here. Is Jesus portrayed in the New Testament fulfilling any prophecies of the Old Testament? Is he actually, or are they fabricating this whole story and making this a fulfillment? That's a question I have.
First of all, I would say the only real proof that Jesus exists is that James existed, and that James was the leader of the early church. So there was, in fact, someone, the brother of James. But what historically we know about, and I think probably Paul says at the beginning of Galatians, I know only that he was crucified. I believe that probably he was crucified, this person that we're talking about, but for the authentic reasons. That's just because he was anti-Roman revolutionary person who was actually willing to use violence ultimately. A typical person who was part of the Zealot, Sicarii, Messianic Qumran. I call them Messianic Sadducees. Most people don't even realize there was an opposition Sadducee group, because the Dead Sea Scrolls refer to themselves as sons of Zadok. And the sons of Zadok is what the Sadducees base their terminology on. So they are, you have to say that the scrolls are Sadducee, but they're totally anti-establishment Sadducee of the priesthood in Jerusalem. They're opposition Sadducees, and I call them that, opposition Sadducees, or better word, Messianic Sadducees. And then no one would ever realize there was such a thing as a Messianic Sadducee, but the scrolls are Messianic Sadducees.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And Sadducees also relates to the word righteous, because the ZDK, Hebrew is built on roots. So ZDK is the name of David's high priest, Zadok. That's where the term Sadducee comes from. Zadok, follower, but it also relates to ZDK, the Zadik, ZDDIK. And I and O are interchangeable in the ancient Hebrew script. So, I mean, it's not clear that this word Sadducees is not based on the righteous one. And so the sons of Zadok, if could for the scrolls be sons of the Tzaddik. And I think that's how they would have played with the word. Whether they meant only that, I can't say, but nothing like establishment status.
Professor Eisenman, you're attuning us to the necessity of understanding the depth of the language. Do we need a new translation of the Dead Sea Scrolls, and if so, why?
Well, I've given my translation of some of the principal documents, and I wouldn't rely on a lot of scholars' translations, new or old, anyway. So I don't think a new translation is going to help anybody. Frankly, they'll make the same mistakes they always make, and having to do with their mindset. and that the scrolls are 2nd century BC, and that they're peaceful Essenes, and that they're this and that they're that. And they're not Essenes, they're not peaceful Essenes, they're Zealot Essenes. And Josephus says, or rather Philo of Alexandria said, there were 4 groups of Essenes. There were the regular sort of, peaceful Essenes, and then there were Zealot Essenes and Sicarii Essenes. And you can imagine that, Sicarii Essenes, terrorist Essenes. And I think the Masada people, they committed suicide. They went up to Masada, and rather than surrender to the Romans, we found Qumran documents, Dead Sea Scroll documents up there. They all committed suicide, as I've said. Now, James, the brother of the Lord, in my view, as Paul calls him, is, I say, without James, we could not, I say, who and whatever James was, so was Jesus. So if you want to know who Jesus was, you got to study the historical James. And that's the only, and I end my James book by saying that, who and whatever James was, so was Jesus. That's the last sentence in that book. And I take 1,000 pages to delineate who James was. So if you're a Christian, in quotes, and you really want to know something about this character, Jesus, look into his brother, who not only succeeded him, if we can say that, but was the leader of the early church in Palestine at the time Paul came up in the 50s and 60s, and clearly was done to death by establishment groups, Roman and rabbinic, and but his followers. He says, I think at one point, he calls them the sons of the covenant. His followers were sons of the covenant.
I'm gonna get a
Prototype.
The hardest thing is to get started.
It's the ideas and the choice of which ones to flesh out that I think are very human discipline.
We have started to deal with.
Professor Eisenman, I have 2 questions, but I'm going to hold one for after this response, so you don't get sidetracked. The first question I want to take is let's focus on James, since you were just talking about him. His letter that says it's from James to the scattered Israelites abroad. What do you find wrong with that letter? I mean, is that letter been tampered with, or is that?
To me, everything is wrong with that letter. I wouldn't rely on that letter in any shape, way, or form.
Okay, and then the second.
So I can't comment on it. To me, that's a very unreliable letter, and I don't think it's anything to do with James's real thoughts. A few things in it, perhaps.
Okay, yeah, because it's all a little
you
bit
asked
long.
me to comment on that. So,
yes, sir.
To the first greeting there, I mean, I can't possibly comment on that. What did
Yes,
you
sir.
say the greeting was again?
Oh, to the scattered Israelites abroad.
What about it?
Yeah, it just sounds like something. Well, he quotes the law, so it's like whoever's writing it sounds like they could be trying to be pro Torah, and they say Lord Jesus Christ.
He quotes who, you say?
Oh no! They sound to be quoting Torah, and he keeps calling Jesus Christ Lord Jesus Christ. Is that something that
that wouldn't go down? That wouldn't go down. You don't have that sort of thing. If you want your guideline, look at the Dead Sea Scrolls. They don't even call the righteous teacher Lord righteous teacher. They don't use that kind of language. That's pagan language. That has to do with Greco-Roman literature. Those are the gods and goddesses in Greco-Roman literature, and a lot of this attitude is influenced by Greco-Roman literature, and that's why it's all written in Greek, because the people who are writing it come from a Greco-Roman cultural background. Can't hear you.
Thank you,
Derek.
You mind if I have a second one?
No, I want you to ask your second.
Man, I love you. I love you, dude.
Can I run down and get a copy of the
professional courtesy?
James a moment?
Absolutely. I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to ask you a question while you're going, so you can think about it. Judas of Galilee, is Jesus taking images from Judas of Galilee in the New Testament? When they made Jesus, do you think they're borrowing from him? When you get back, please.
That. I haven't thought about that. Let me run down and get this book here.
Yes, sir. Luther, this is cool, man. I've got a few wild ideas, of course, but You're muted, by the way. You're muted. You're muted.
How are we doing on time? I want to keep it to 1 hour. Do not exceed 1 hour.
Do not exceed an hour.
No, don't exceed an hour. That's what we
Okay.
said, and we need to do that. We need to
Okay.
honor that.
Yeah.
I want us to honor that, and I expect us to honor that.
Okay.
We said
Well,
it.
we've got about 15, 20 minutes tops, and that's it.
All right, there you go. 15,
So,
20 minutes.
and
That's it.
that's
we shut
perfect.
it down.
And absolutely. All right. Dr. Eisenman is back. By the way, everybody, thank you for watching this far. Be sure to tune in and check out his books. They're in the description. James, the brother of Jesus.
That's the Penguin. That's the American. That's the American edition, still in print. That's the thickness of it. It's a much better, not a better in terms of what's in it. It's the same, but it's a much better production. A typical, really first-rate Penguin production than the one our friend there is showing, which is not bad, but it's nothing as impressive. And this is still in print here in the United States. Really lovely.
Thank you.
I'm really very, very proud of that.
Yeah,
if
that
I
is.
were you, I'd go buy a copy online from one of those sources. You can probably get one for $8 or $9. Nowadays.
You think you're fine after a car accident until this happens. Most people don't realize that even accidents that seem minor can financially destroy you when the real costs hit weeks later. If you've been in a car accident recently, even one that seemed minor or where you were just a passenger, you need to hear this before it's too late. Here's what happens to most people. They walk away from what seems like a minor accident thinking everything is okay. Maybe a little soreness, maybe some minor damage to their car, but nothing serious. Then reality hits. The medical bills start rolling in. Your car needs more repairs than you thought. You're missing work because of lingering pain or appointments. Suddenly, what seemed like a small bump in the road becomes a financial nightmare. But here's what nobody tells you in those first few days after an accident. You're actually owed a huge check even if the accident seemed minor, or you...
Yes, sir. Thank you. But did you have any thoughts on Judas of Galilee by any chance? Because Daniel T. Unterbrink,
Judas the Galilean. Well, Unterbrink, yeah. I don't pay any attention to what he says, so I don't really have a lot of respect for what, because he took a lot of his ideas from me and then enlarged in his own manner on them, and they become unrecognizable. But go ahead. What did he say on this particular issue? Can't hear you.
Oh, we know that Jesus is mythologized in the Gospels, which is obvious. But he says,
yeah, okay.
He says that that they took characteristics of the history of what him and Matthias, his father, and they created certain elements in the Gospels to characterize the messianic leader at that moment, which was Judas. Do you see Jesus, even if that's not the guy? Do you see the character in the New Testament maybe copying from someone in history, maybe?
Well, I'm sure the writers would take material from wherever they could in terms of being influenced. So I can't comment that whether they were or not. Obviously, would take from wherever they could. But I don't think Judas the Galilean you're talking about. Is that who you're talking about? I'm sure that they might get some inspiration from that. Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that that's possible.
Thank you.
But I mean, it's still all very, very creative. They don't have the material of the historical Jesus, and they haven't written a gospel of the historical James yet.
Professor Eisenman.
Yeah.
Professor Eisenman.
Okay.
Let's talk about magic. Simon Magus of Samaria. What would have been the Messianic Jews' attitude toward him? It has been said that both Jews and Romans shared an aversion to magic. Well, from the Jewish side, what do you think about that?
I don't know what kind of Jews you're wanting me to refer to. Rabbinic Jews or Qumran Jews? Qumran
Jews. Let's take them. Let's take Qumran Jews. Right.
Simple as that. There would be no two sides, and probably rabbinic Jews wouldn't be very happy with any kind of magic of any sort. So they might have condemned him to be stoned as well.
So then it would not make sense for Simon Magus to have been in line behind John the Baptist, who of course was in great esteem among the Qumran Jews. But for Simon Magus,
I think he was a member of the community. Calling him a Baptist, they were all Baptists at the community. There's huge amount of baptismal pools in the settlement. They were all daily bathers, daily immersers. So John was one of them that came into literature from Josephus. Josephus was familiar with him and therefore introduced him to the other outside world people. And so they co-opted him into their presentation of the Jesus story. But I don't think that Jesus had to be taught to immerse in for purity and holiness on a daily basis by John the Baptist. It's in all the Dead Sea Scroll literature. And you know why they were doing that? Because they were preparing for the final apocalyptic war against all evil on the earth. And they felt in the war scroll that the holy angels were going to have to join their camps. They speak of camps in the wilderness camps, that they're preparing for this war. And to prepare for the war, and they're not peace loving, as you see, to prepare for the war, they had to be perfectly hooked the time, because the holy angels were going to descend. The holy angels were their atomic bomb. They were the thing. They knew they couldn't fight Rome, this small group of people, 500, a couple of thousand, whatever they were. The Romans would slaughter them. But they were preparing for the holy angels to join the conflict. And to join the conflict, they say in the war scroll, the holy angels will come down and join our camps. But to join our camps, the camps had to be perfectly pure, because the holy angels could not abide human impurity. If they came in touch with human impurity, they couldn't go back to heaven. They couldn't go back up to heaven, so they would not come down. So the point of the matter is that the camps had to be absolutely pure, and they had to be ritual immersion all the time, day and night, daily bathing. So, we don't need a John the Baptist to teach us this. It's all in the literature, the Dead Sea Scrolls, though John is part of that literature, I'm sure.
I never. Well, I hadn't heard about it that way. Doesn't Josephus kind of flip it on its head when he says he saw angels in the heavens when Rome was fighting?
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, I wasn't familiar with that one. Absolutely, flipping it on its head, reversing it again. Absolutely.
So, would in your opinion?
And he's a tremendous collaborator and someone who flatters other people, a flatterer and a sycophant.
To ask you about,
he's the arch traitor. What he should have been done was killed. But right. we are grateful for the fact that he gave us a document of a full compendium of the period and names and so on. Even in his autobiography, though, he's not embarrassed to show how he is willing to kill his fellow holdouts in the cave in Galilee where they're fighting the Romans, and then surrender to the Romans and proclaim Vespasian the world ruler that would come out of Palestine. This is the arch traitor of all traitors. And when he goes and the Romans are encircling Jerusalem, you can get this from his autobiography again, or from the Jewish War, one of the two, I don't know which. The Romans use him as a spokesperson to speak to the Jews, because they don't speak Hebrew, on the walls of the city who are holding out against them. And they're besieging the city. These are not rabbinic Jews that are being besieged. These are our zealot Jews, our Qumran Jews, and so on. And so he goes up there and he's staggered because he admits that one of the people on the wall took a sling and slung a stone at him and hit him on the head and knocked him down. And he's not embarrassed to admit that this happened to him, how much they hated him on the walls, and they regarded him as a traitor. He is Mr. Traitor #2.
Whoa. I'd never known this detail. I guess I need to go pick up his book. But you know, if you can only imagine too. I get where we are glad that we have his history. However, how much history did we really lose that we aren't aware of, written even by the Jews themselves? So it's kind of a sad thing that we're not getting to see a lot of maybe the insight that may have been going on as well.
Well, the only reason you see that his history survived is that he was a collaborator. He was a traitor. Otherwise, his history wouldn't survive. The same with the Gospels. One of the reasons that they ultimately were able to circulate in the Roman Empire is they weren't full of anti-Roman antagonism. And, they were, love your enemy ethos. And, but if they had been the scrolls, had to be put in caves and hidden.
Wow.
And the documents on Masada, they were all destroyed, obviously. And but I think those people destroyed their own documents. I'm not sure what happened there.
Would you think that the Qumran sect of Jews were more true to the Old Testament scriptures?
In my view, yes. They are what Jewish nationalism is. The basis of their ideology and religion is righteousness. That's everything. Zadok, righteousness. This play on ZDK, the letters ZDK, tzedek, righteousness as a noun. And they call themselves the sons of righteousness and so on. And so, yes, everything they were interested in had to do with righteousness. And I think that's basically what the scriptures try to be about. I'm not sure they succeed, but the prophets, some of the prophets are really staggeringly good. Staggeringly good.
Joseph Atwell talks about the literary devices used in the Gospels. And one of the things that he, I believe he said it was inspired by your work. I'm not exactly.
That's true. Yeah,
I'm not 100% sure on it. But he talks about these names that are used throughout the literature. Names like these specifically: Simon, Matthias, Eleazar, Judas. Would those names have been meaningful for Jews in the diaspora or just in Palestine? Or would they have signaled something to Israel in the diaspora?
Well, why are we distinguishing between Jews in Israel and Jews in the diaspora? What you need to do is distinguish between hardcore zealot type Jews and collaborating Jews, and it doesn't matter if they're in Israel or in the diaspora. There are two types, and ultimately the only ones who survived are the second type. The first type all died on Masada or in Qumran and so on, or went out into these outlying areas in Iran and Kurdistan and places like that, and down into Islam. Those very xenophobic and zealot-minded Jews, and you see that I am for them. But I think that is the ethos that Israel needs to adopt in order to survive. And one of the reasons that Israel had so much trouble in the first 40 or 50 years is they didn't know. There was too much argument among the Jews what Zionism was, and there were, again, the usual, collaborating Zionists, soft-core Zionists, and then there were the hardcore, zealot Zionists. And they never really understood, because if they had understood, we wouldn't even have a Palestine question. Why? Because the so-called Arabs, and I don't like to call them Arabs, but let's call them Arabs if you want. The people who were living in Palestine all left when the Romans came, and the first who came back were Jews in the 19th century, and the Palestinians came afterwards because the economic situation in so-called Palestine, which was a word the British used, because they didn't want to call it a Jewish place, they invented that term. That term was not used at the time of Jesus. It was invented by the Romans when they conquered and destroyed the country, and they wanted to apply the name Philistine to the country. It's based on the term Philistine. It's a Roman version. Palestina is Philistina. They didn't want to call it Judea anymore. And that's where that comes from. So let's go to the modern period, though. The mandate for Palestine was created, that language was created by the British in the 1920s. No one was referring to the land as Palestine in the Arab period. It was only Syria. Now, the point is that this so-called mandate for Palestine, 2/3 were cut away.
God and country. That's the vision God gave my grandma in the late 1970s on her farm in Mount Vernon, Ohio, that would breathe life into our family business. By 1980, Mary Levitt, my grandma, took the seed that God planted in her heart and began selling the American flag out of the trunk of her car during the Iranian crisis. God was with my grandmother, and so the business grew. By 1987, Mary opened her first physical store, and in 1990 moved to the place where it still stands to this day. God stayed faithful to our family, and by 1993 he added my mom, Lori Watson, to come and help grow the family business further. Over the next decades, God blessed our family business and grew us into one of the largest independent flag retailers in the country. Along with God's faithfulness, the staples of what has allowed our business to thrive has been the following 3 pillars: quality products, excellent customer service, and timely deliveries. In 2017, after 37 years of service, Mary retired and my mom Lori took over. In 2019, I joined the business to help take what these 2 strong women have built and expand manufacturing further and help grow what has been a regional power into a household name across the country. I'm Harrison Watson with FlagLadyUSA.com. And just like we told you our story today, every flag we sell tells a story. We hope you'll trust our family to help tell yours.
And given to the family from Mecca for services rendered. But that was part of the mandate for Palestine. So they already got their state in Transjordan. That they gave it to a foreign king, that's their problem. And they should work it out. But the Jews, if they had a hard-headed approach to this, would just be hard-headed, period. And they said, this little teeny bit you've given us, this 1/3 of the mandate, now you want the Palestinians to have 3 states. You want Transjordan, Jordan. You want the West Bank area, and you want Gaza area. You want 3 areas. That wasn't what was originally envisioned. But Jews don't speak this way. They don't understand how to put the case. And if they had understood from the beginning how to put the case, many of these problems would never have occurred. If they had gone to the UN and spoke like I'm speaking, people would not have liked it, but they would have listened. I'm not listening in the sense of agree. They would have learned something, put it that way.
Excellent point. So I'm circling back to these heroes of the Jewish people: Simon, Matthias, Eleazar, Judas. Those are some of the strongest names available.
Who's using those names? Well, who's using those names?
Those names are used throughout the Gospels.
Well,
those
exactly.
names are used throughout literature, right?
The Gospels are not historical documents, so that doesn't impress me at all.
Okay, are those names used in the Qumran documents?
No, of course not. They don't use names in the Qumran documents at all.
No names in the Qumran
documents. When they call the person the leader, the righteous teacher, they name him, and so on and so forth.
Holy crap!
Yeah. No, there are no names.
So nobody's authoring these books at all. Nobody's.
There are names in the Qumran graveyard. You can go look on the various markers there and get some names, I'm sure, but I'm not familiar with the names.
Wow, that's awesome, Luther. Good question, and thank you for telling us that.
That's fascinating, Professor Eisenman. What a gem.
Hey, look, that's fine. We are winding down.
I said we are coming up on an hour.
This is it.
One hour, we'll keep you to it.
Dr. Eisenman.
I'm getting a pain in my stomach, so when I get a pain in my stomach from talking, I know I've had it.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, because this was it. Guys, we're going to have to do another round. We'll come up with more collective questions based off your books. And make sure you check out the description of this video. You saw the books. They popped up on the screen. You saw everything.
Look at this, James. It's still for sale.
Yes.
It's a huge paperback. A lot of those other books aren't for sale, though. You can get them on Amazon if you want to order any of my other books.
Every scholar that I've ever read that touches on this topic always refers to Robert Eisenman. Professor Robert Eisenman, thank
That's
you for
right.
joining us on Myth Vision, sir. And like I said, guys, there's a PayPal. I will put that in the description. This is a direct PayPal to his PayPal account where you can donate and help him in his endeavor, of course, for his research and such. Thank you, Luther.
Professor
Thanks for having
Eisenman,
me.
it's a privilege to have you. We hope to have you on the show again soon.
Thanks for having me. We'll keep in touch.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Every month, this Airbnb pays me about $2,700 in semi-passive income. Now, here's the thing. I don't own it and I don't pay any rent. Now, here's the thing. You can actually do this too. It doesn't even matter where you live, even if you're in a boring little town where almost no one travels to. And if you think I'm in here every single day, changing sheets, cleaning up after people, and messaging people on the app all day long, think again. So the
from in that kind of